Good evening, everyone. I hope you are well. From the minute the court decision was announced, I have been meaning to take a few minutes to congratulate a wonderful woman for being brave, for persevering, and for eventually winning through at the High Court. I am talking, of course, about the one and only Katharine Birbalsingh, the head teacher of the Michaela Community School in Wembley, London, who actually stood up to threats and intimidation when she wanted to enforce her rules in her schools and not allow praying in the school at any time. She has faced a lot of threats, intimidation, and even after the decision, just glancing through social media today, in particular on Twitter, I can't believe the amount of toxic, horrid posts and comments that I am seeing. The toxic left, the traitors who are within our society, already know how significant this court decision is. For the rest of the country, I don't think the true gravity of this court decision has actually sunk in yet. This may well be our political, social and cultural Battle of Vienna moment. It may well be the decision that stops the tide of what we have faced in recent years, which is little more than a political and cultural and social sinister game of Jenga. Piece by piece, parts of our societies are being chipped away at, and one day, if we're not careful, if we allowed this process to continue, our entire society would collapse. The perpetrators of this collapse may have visions of some form of euphoria. That would never happen. We only need to look at the chaos that they have left behind before they came to this country. So that will never happen. However, in the process, if we do not resist, they will destroy our country. Yesterday, she was interviewed by Peter Boghossian on YouTube. I've put the link below. It's definitely worth watching. I don't know too much about this lady apart from having followed this case, but I have to literally take a few minutes to congratulate her, to praise her, and to thank her for having the courage to fight a fight that so many people, thousands of people up and down this country, have become too scared to stand against. This is not about prayer. This is about political point scoring. We're back to the political game of Jenga again. Every single avenue that can be picked on is picked on, whether it is done by love bombing, by deceit, by bullying, by threats, by intimidation. It is all part of the same plan, all part of the same plot, and the people of this country must stand against this. And it's indicative of the age we are in that it took a brave head teacher to show thousands of people in this country who are capitulating to the mob what can be done if you have the courage to stand tall and say no. Enough is enough. Now, in light of the climate that we're in at the moment, many of you may be persuaded by one or the other of the insidious duopoly, depending on what they promise. They may promise to stop the boats. We've heard that one before. However, a few thousand people, although we don't want them to enter our country legally, but a few thousand people arriving illegally are used by the current administration to take our eyes off the fact that while we're watching out for illegal people arriving illegally, 1.4 million have arrived perfectly legally through the airports, and that's just last year. If you are going to base your decision on one policy by either party, one promise, I urge you to consider this. Not to base the decision on who you vote for just on a single policy, but to look at the party as a whole. Look at their moral compass. Look at their track record. The Conservatives have been in power for 14 years. So even though the floodgates were opened by Blair in long before, in 14 years, what have they done to stem the flow? It's not that long ago that we were being promised that hundreds of thousands would be reduced to tens of thousands, and yet the hundreds of thousands have become millions. What will that be in 4 or 5 years? But going back to my point about a single policy, consider this. In 1997, when Tony Blair got into power, one particular policy was responsible for more people deciding to vote for him than for anyone else. And that was because he promised to ban fox hunting. Noble cause. It was then, it still is, and always will be. But a bad man, a bad party, a collection of people who have no respect for their country or its citizens shouldn't be allowed to sneak into power by hijacking a good cause. And that's exactly what they did, as we know now, because we know exactly what he stood for, what they stood for, and what they've done to this country. Do not forget, he sold out this country to earn himself brownie points so he could jet off and become a Middle Eastern ambassador, make his millions, and still sell out this country to the EU and still interfere in our country's politics to this day. These are traits of the party that have never left, and sadly the Conservatives are just as bad, and in the coming months they will say or do anything to avoid the electoral obliteration that they are facing. They may promise a vote on the ECHR. Well, we're still waiting for their promise, which was, let's get Brexit done. Brexit has not been done. And in actual fact, each one of them have betrayed us. Boris betrayed us. It was under Boris that the Wealth Tax Commission was actually commissioned. It is there in the background, and whenever they decide to pull it out of the bag, suddenly they will go for the wealth of this country under the guise of a one-off wealth tax, basically stealing people's wealth. It was under Boris that ULEZ was introduced. It was under the current Prime Minister that Khan was allowed to expand ULEZ. And don't believe for 1 minute that if the government wanted to stop the expansion of ULEZ that they couldn't have done so. They could have. They didn't even put up a fight because it worked out perfectly well for them. Allow Khan to exploit the poor, the poorest in London, to raise millions in unjustified charges and fines because effectively it benefited the government and they could just blame him. They're just as bad. And don't think for 1 minute that if a Conservative mayor of London is elected that things will change, because they won't. Remember, one good policy does not make a bad party a good party. And this head teacher, this brave lady, has done more for the pushback against this multicultural madness that has been bestowed on the people of this country without our permission, I might add, than any of our leaders have done in the last 1 or 2 decades. Thank you very much. As always, I will see you in the next video. Please feel free to get in touch, contact me, visit my website, complete my election poll. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your suggestions, good or bad. I need to hear them so I know what you're thinking. Thank you very much. Bye-bye for now, and I'll see you soon.